Hey guys, Brad of Brave the Woods here. Today we're going to be doing something really unorthodox, for me at least. I don't typically omit color, but in this challenge here for myself, I'm going to try and do a completely black and white, as realistic as possible sketch of my favorite comedy duo, Abbott and Costello. And if you don't know who Abbott and Costello is, you have some homework to do. I own all their movies, but one of their most famous skits, and probably one of the best comedy skits of all time, most clever comedy skit, was Who's on First, What's on Second. So look it up if you haven't already. But that's what we're gonna be doing today. We're gonna be jumping into this, trying to get hyper realistic with our sketching, and we're gonna do it all on the iPad Pro in Procreate using a pencil brush. So let's go check it out. Anytime I'm trying to draw more realistic, I have to really focus on the basics and make sure that the core structure is sound before I move on to all the details. So I take a little bit more time here at the beginning, adding in these blue lines that are just going to be kind of my guides moving forward, so I can kind of see which angle of the face. And again, I really want to make sure the proportions are correct at the very beginning. This kind of stuff I don't do all the time, so you're going to see me making a few different small mistakes here and there, and maybe you draw super hyper realistic drawings and you would have done this differently. I know that also, to make it, if you want it completely accurate, I could have done a grid, but I've done grids before and they're really not my favorite. It feels less like a more organic drawing experience to me. And so I like to do it this way, and it's a lot more of a challenge for me, which is fun. So when doing this, though, make sure that if you're doing it, to have that structure down at the very beginning, because later on, even though this is digital, it's going to be really hard to go back and even erase some portions of it and try to make the shading and everything feel natural and smooth. Trust me, throughout this video, you'll see I kind of have issues with that throughout. But yeah, at the very beginning, put in that time to make sure it's correct, because you'll see up here that I have a few mistakes that I'll have to fix, and it was not fun. It's fast here because I have it time-lapse, but in reality, it was a lot of time. And there, oh, yep, you can see it. I messed up the mouth. The mouth, I put so much work and detail into that mouth, but I had to adjust it because it was too crooked and it wasn't far enough over on the face. So I should have followed that blue line that I had, the framework that I created at the beginning. I should have followed that a little bit better. And the one thing I noticed too is eyes. I always draw eyes too big. I think that's a common problem. I don't think I'm the only one who does that, but I tend to draw the eyes too big. And I wonder if that's just because that's like the focal point a lot of the time of the face, and so you tend to draw that a little bit larger than it needs to be. So I had to go back and make those a little bit smaller so that they felt more proportional, and it looks a lot better, more realistic, but it was a lot of work, like I said, of going back and trying to get all those skin tones just right again. So when I erased it, I tried to erase with a nice feathered edge on it. You actually use the same brush that I used, just like if you have a brush already selected in Procreate, then you just hold on the eraser icon, and it will adopt whatever brush you're using as your main brush as the eraser as well. So it gives the same effect. So that helped out a whole lot. Here's something I didn't really think about too much when I was working on Bud Abbott's face was, because he doesn't have as many lines and what do you call them? Lines or folds in his skin in the face as much as Lou Costello does here on the right. So as I'm working on doing his face, I noticed so many times that I have to go back and erase and lighten things or just completely start over and on portions of his face, because every time I would start making marks, which, you want to make, when I'm trying to make it accurate, you want to put in all those lines. I started noticing that they were just too defined, and that's all I saw when you looked at it. So one thing I kind of picked up from all this is, yeah, that might be what it looks like, but you kind of have to tone it back. So when you're illustrating those lines, like I think, so I had to look this up because I honestly didn't know what they were all called. But that little line between your nose and your upper lip is called your philtrum. And, that right there, some people will do all that. If you've seen Napoleon Dynamite, I hope some of you guys have seen it. At least some of you guys remember Napoleon Dynamite. And he would draw, remember when he drew, dang it, what's her name? I don't remember the girl's name that he drew a portrait of. And he talked about the shading on the upper lip. And it was very, very defined. It's kind of freaky looking, especially around like your laugh lines on your cheek. All that kind of creeped you out because it was too much detail, too much shading there. So kind of a key that I learned personally from working on this was to just go subtle. Start really, really subtle and then slowly build it up where you need. Otherwise, you can age a person significantly because those wrinkles are very, very defined and they're very apparent. So you have to kind of pump the brakes a little bit when you're drawing those lines in the face and not get too carried away, which is kind of hard when you're getting that granular. You're in there and drawing and drawing and drawing, trying to capture all the detail you can, and then you step back and you're like, woo, kind of freaks you out. So that's one little tip that I learned, and I'm passing on to you. Okay, I think I finished it. If I look at it much longer, like every piece, it's just gonna start falling apart in front of me. So I will stop looking at it. It's finished. It took me way more hours than I thought it would, but I'm happy with the results. Oh, shoot. Happy with the results. They look like Abbott and Costello, and it looks an awful lot like the photo, but I'm not gonna overlay it because if I do, I know I'm gonna look at all of the little proportions being incorrect and things, but if you're just eyeballing it, it looks pretty correct. So I'm gonna stick with that. I'm sure there's funky fingers or heads are too big or eyes are too small or whatever it is. But that's the whole joy of doing this, right? Like this is an exercise I feel of paying attention to the very, very most minute details and see if you can get the proportions correct. All these little lot of things that I don't do a ton of much when I'm doing my commercial illustration work because I get to be a little bit more abstract. So this was a good exercise. I probably will take a break from doing another one anytime soon, but I really enjoyed how it turned out. Thanks for watching, you guys. If you guys are new here, please subscribe. If you guys are regulars around these parts, just go ahead and like this video, and we'll see you next time.